Her head is violently forced down into a dinner plate as the New Year's countdown shatters, guests screaming, champagne spilling across white linen. In a room full of witnesses, a pregnant woman is publicly attacked by the very man who controls her, turning celebration into instant horror. What appears to be a single outburst tears open, a hidden pattern of domination, fear, and humiliation. This story is raw and relentless, driven by consequences that arrive fast and brutal. Stay with me, because once that night explodes, nothing can be hidden anymore. The room froze on a breath that never finished. Crystal chandeliers spilled warm gold over white linen tables, champagne flutes chimed softly, and a live band held a bright note as the countdown clock glowed above the stage. 10 seconds to midnight. Laughter rippled through the ballroom of the five-star hotel, thick with perfume, roasted meat, and the sweet heat of celebration. At the center table, she sat upright with both hands resting instinctively over her belly. 7 months pregnant, careful and composed, her chair angled slightly away from the crowd so she could breathe. She had declined the wine twice already, politely, with a small smile that tried to keep the peace. Her husband sat beside her, jaw tight, eyes sharp, tapping the table with a finger that would not stop. Someone shouted, 10, and the room answered back. 100 voices rising together, cameras lifted, phones tilted. The band smiled and leaned in. At 7, his chair scraped loudly as he pushed it back, the sound cutting through the cheer like a blade. Heads turned. At 6, he stood, towering over the table, face flushed, lips pressed thin, one hand already reaching. At 5, she looked up, startled, her smile faltering as she whispered, "Please, not here." At 4, the first plate shattered, a sharp crack that made nearby guests gasp. At 3, his hands closed over the back of her head, fingers tangling in her hair. At 2, he slammed her forward, hard, forcing her face down into the food on the plate, pressing with both hands as if to make a point, as if the room were not watching. At 1, the world broke. The impact was not loud the way movies make it loud. It was heavy and sickening. Porcelain scraped against linen, sauce smeared. The table jolted, silverware skittering. Her body folded instinctively, shoulders hunching, arms flailing for balance, one hand flying to her stomach as she gagged and coughed. He held her there for a breath too long, long enough for shock to register, long enough for the silence to turn solid. Phones captured everything, the angle of his wrists, the bend of her neck, the stunned faces around them. A camera light on the ceiling blinked red, steady and unblinking. Someone screamed. A chair fell. The band cut out mid-note. She sucked in air, choking, tears streaking through makeup now smeared with sauce, her breath coming fast and shallow. "Stop," she tried to say, the word breaking apart. "Please." He released her with a shove that sent her lurching sideways, her chair tipping, the edge of the table biting into her hip. She caught herself with one hand, the other cradling her belly, eyes wide with terror and pain. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the room erupted. "Oh my God! Did you see that? Is she okay?" Glass clinked and broke as people stood. A woman near the aisle covered her mouth, tears welling. A man fumbled his phone, already dialing. Another voice, older and firm, cut through the chaos. "Get him away from her." Security, black suits and earpieces, surged from the edges, but even they hesitated, stunned by the brazenness of what they had just seen. He tried to speak, his mouth forming words that did not land. "She embarrassed me," he snapped, voice too loud, cracking. She made a scene. His hands shook now, anger tipping into something uglier as he looked around, realizing too late that the eyes on him were no longer impressed or indulgent. They were hard. They were recording. "Turn those off," he barked, pointing at the phones. No one listened. She slid from the chair to her feet, swaying, her breath ragged. A woman she barely knew stepped in front of her, arms out, creating a barrier. "Do not touch her," the woman said, calm but unyielding. Another guest grabbed a napkin and pressed it gently to the pregnant woman's mouth. "Breathe," he whispered, slow. She nodded, trying, her hand never leaving her belly. A low moan escaped her as a cramp rippled through her abdomen. fear flashing across her face. Security finally closed in, hands up, voices measured. "Sir, step back," one guard said. "Now." He resisted for a second, bristling. Then the weight of hands on his arms convinced him. He wrenched free just enough to shout, "This is a private matter." The older woman who had spoken before shook her head. "No," she said, "not anymore." Across the room, the countdown clock still glowed, forgotten, frozen at 0. Confetti cannons that were meant to explode stayed silent. Midnight arrived without joy. Outside, fireworks began to crackle, muffled through glass, a cruel contrast to the horror unfolding inside. Phones continued to rise, their lenses steady, their little lights unwavering. A waiter stood, rooted in place, tray shaking in his hands. The manager appeared, pale, gesturing urgently to staff. "Call an ambulance," she ordered. "Now." The pregnant woman's knees buckled, and she would have fallen if not for the arms that caught her. She clutched at the sleeve of the woman holding her and whispered, "My baby." The words sliced through the noise. "My baby." A hush fell again, heavier than before. Someone nearby started crying openly. "Sit," the manager said gently, guiding her to a chair away from the table, away from him. "We have you." A staff member placed a coat over her shoulders. Another held a phone steady, documenting the scene, capturing the distance now enforced between them. The red light of the ceiling camera reflected in the mirrored wall, a constant witness. He stood restrained a few steps back, chest heaving, eyes darting from face to face as realization crept in. "It was nothing," he muttered, voice losing force. "She overreacted." The words sounded hollow even to him. A man near the aisle shook his head slowly. "You pushed her head into a plate," he said, "in front of everyone." Murmurs of agreement rippled outward. The pregnant woman closed her eyes and focused on breathing, counting as she had been taught, trying to steady the tightness in her belly. "I need a doctor," she said quietly. "Please." The manager nodded. "They are on the way." Security tightened their hold on her husband, guiding him farther back, creating a clear path through the crowd. The band members stared from the stage, instruments hanging uselessly at their sides. Somewhere, a child laughed at the fireworks outside. Inside, the party was dead. What remained was the sharp clarity of truth under bright lights, the kind that cannot be undone. Phones captured the final moments of the scene as medics pushed through the doors, their uniforms a stark contrast against tuxedos and gowns. One knelt beside her, voice calm, professional. "Ma'am, can you tell me where it hurts?" She pointed, breath trembling. "Here," she said, "and I feel dizzy." As the medics worked, a guard leaned toward the manager and spoke quietly. She nodded once, decisively. "Preserve the footage," she said. "All of it." The red light above blinked again, steady as ever. Midnight had come and gone. The new year began with sirens, with evidence, with a room full of witnesses who would never forget what they had seen. 3 hours earlier, the ballroom had looked harmless, even beautiful, the kind of place where problems seemed to soften under warm light and polished smiles. Late afternoon sun slipped through tall windows and settled on white linen like honey, making everything appear calm and forgiving. Staff moved with practiced grace, aligning silverware, straightening chair backs, murmuring into headsets. The band rehearsed quietly on stage, a piano run here, a soft brush of drums there, nothing loud enough to disturb the illusion that the night would unfold exactly as planned. She arrived early because her doctor had advised it: avoid crowds, take breaks, sit when needed. 7 months pregnant meant listening to her body and protecting the small life inside it, even when the calendar demanded celebration. She changed in the VIP lounge, smoothing her dress, breathing slowly, checking her reflection for signs of fatigue. Her hands rested over her belly as if it were instinct, a shield she did not think about anymore. She smiled at a server and asked for water. No ice, room temperature. She had rehearsed the words in her head all week. Polite refusals, gentle deflections, the language of compromise. No wine tonight. No standing for too long. No loud arguments. The doctor had been clear. Stress was not an abstract idea. Stress could trigger contractions. Stress could cause dizziness, fainting, pain. Stress could become an emergency if it spiraled. Her husband entered behind her, the door clicking shut with a sound that always made her shoulders tighten. He looked immaculate, tailored suit, cufflinks catching the light, confidence stitched into every movement. He scanned the room like it belonged to him. "Smile," he said without looking at her. "Tonight matters." She nodded. "I know," she said. "I just need a few breaks." He exhaled sharply through his nose. "You will be fine," he replied. "Do not make this about you." The words landed softly and still cut. They walked into the ballroom together, cameras already turning, greetings flowing. Compliments followed him like a tide. She received them too, softer, gentler, often followed by a glance at her belly. She accepted them with grace, kept her posture straight, sat when she needed to. At their table, a place card waited, with her name printed neatly, centered. She noticed he shifted it a little to the side before sitting, barely an inch, enough to signal who belonged where. She did not comment. As guests arrived, servers passed with trays of champagne. She raised her hand and shook her head, smiling. "Just water, please," she said. The server nodded. Her husband watched the exchange and frowned. "One glass?" he murmured. "It is New Year's Eve." She kept her voice low. "The doctor said no alcohol," she replied. "I am fine with water." He leaned closer, his smile fixed. "Do not embarrass me," he whispered. "People notice these things." She swallowed and nodded again, the reflex of peacekeeping stronger than her discomfort. The band warmed up, laughter rose, chairs scraped. Time moved forward in small, manageable pieces. She ate slowly, careful with spices, careful with portions. He watched her plate and commented anyway. "You barely touched it," he said. "They went to trouble for this menu." She set her fork down. "I will eat more later," she said. "I feel a little nauseous." He scoffed quietly. "Convenient," he replied. A woman across the table glanced up, sensing tension, then looked away. Between courses, she excused herself to stand and stretch. He followed, hand firm at her elbow. "Sit," he said. "People are watching." She met his eyes. "I need to move," she answered. "My back hurts." He released her with a sigh. 5 minutes, he said. "Then be back." She walked toward the windows, breathing in, breathing out, counting. The city below glittered, distant fireworks already testing the sky. She rested her palms on the glass and felt the baby shift, a reminder of what mattered. When she returned, he was speaking animatedly, laughing too loudly, telling a story she had heard before. She took her seat and smiled at the guests, though her lower back throbbed. A server approached with wine again. She declined again. The server hesitated, glanced at her husband, then moved on. His jaw tightened. "You are making a statement," he said under his breath. "I am following medical advice," she replied. "Please." He did not answer. As the evening advanced, small comments stacked like stones. "You are sensitive lately. Do not be dramatic. It is all in your head." Each one landed, each one stayed. She felt her pulse quicken, a familiar warning. She placed a hand on her belly and focused on her breathing. "I need to sit quietly," she said, "just for a bit." He rolled his eyes. "Always something," he muttered. The countdown clock above the stage flickered to life, a bright promise of unity and noise. Guests grew louder, more animated, phones appeared. The band took positions, the room filled with anticipation. She felt it too, the collective lift, the pressure of expectation. She leaned toward him one last time. "Please," she said softly, "let us just get through the countdown. Then we can step outside." He did not look at her. "Do not lecture me," he said. "Not tonight." A server placed a new plate in front of her, rich and heavy. The smell turned her stomach. She pushed it slightly away. "I cannot," she whispered. He noticed immediately. "What now?" he said, voice rising. "Eat." She shook her head. "I feel sick," she said. "I am sorry." He laughed once, sharp. "You always have an excuse," he replied. Nearby conversation paused. Someone glanced over. She felt heat rush to her face, a mix of embarrassment and fear. "Lower your voice," she said. "Please." He leaned back, eyes bright. "You want to control everything," he said. "You want attention." Her heart pounded. She placed both hands on the table to steady herself. "I want to protect our baby," she said. "That is all." The word baby seemed to flip a switch. the room began the countdown practice, a test run that drew cheers. He stood abruptly, chair scraping, the sound slicing through the hum. Heads turned. She looked up at him, alarmed. "Sit down," she whispered. "We are almost there." He did not sit. He looked around, aware now of the eyes, the cameras, the stage lights. His face flushed. "You will not ruin this," he said. She shook her head, confused. "I am not," she said. "I just need a moment." The clock reset for the final countdown. 10 minutes to midnight. The band signaled readiness. She felt a tightness in her chest and a low ache in her abdomen, the kind that demanded caution. She tried to stand, to move away, before anything else could go wrong. His hand shot out and caught her wrist. "Stay," he said. She pulled gently. "You are hurting me," she said. He released her, but his eyes stayed locked on her face. She sat again, heart racing, hands trembling. She whispered to herself, "Breathe." She looked around for help, for an ally, for someone to notice the strain. Faces smiled back, unaware or unwilling. The clock ticked closer. She closed her eyes for a second and imagined quiet. Imagined a hospital room with steady beeps and calm voices. Imagined safety. When she opened them, he was already rising, anger coiled tight, the room holding its breath. The tension did not arrive all at once. It accumulated quietly, like pressure building in a sealed room, each small moment tightening the air. By the time the guests leaned closer together and the lights dimmed a fraction for atmosphere, the rules had already been set, though no one else could see them. He controlled the rhythm of the evening with subtle corrections. He decided when she sat, when she stood, when she smiled, and how long that smile lasted. Every adjustment came wrapped in civility, delivered with a pleasant tone that suggested reason, not threat. It started with money, always money. "We are over budget already," he said as he glanced at the menu card, tapping it with his finger. "Do you know how much this table costs?" She answered carefully. "I did not choose the venue," she said. "You did," he smiled thinly. "And I expect you to respect that," he replied. The word respect hung between them, vague and sharp at the same time. She nodded, even though her stomach churned. Then came the phone. He noticed it face down beside her plate and frowned. "Who keeps texting you?" he asked. She shook her head. "No one," she said. "It is my sister checking in." His eyes flicked to her belly. "You do not need to run your life by committee," he said. "I am here." She did not point out that being present and being supportive were not the same thing. She simply turned the phone off and slid it into her purse, her shoulders tightening as if she had been told to hold her breath. Friends drifted by to greet them, offering congratulations and warm wishes. Each interaction followed the same pattern. He spoke first, louder, confidently. She followed, softer, measured. When someone asked how she was feeling, she began to answer honestly, "A little tired," before he interrupted with a laugh. "She is dramatic," he said. "Everything is a crisis these days." Laughter rippled politely. She forced a smile and felt her cheeks burn. A server approached with a tray of small plates. She reached for one and paused, scanning the ingredients. "Does this have raw fish?" she asked. The server hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, ma'am." She withdrew her hand. "I will pass," she said. He leaned back in his chair and exhaled loudly. "Unbelievable," he said. "You are acting like the world is out to poison you." She kept her voice steady. "It is a medical precaution," she said. "I am not accusing anyone." He waved a dismissive hand. "You are making everyone uncomfortable," he replied. The rules became clearer with each exchange. Do not contradict him. Do not draw attention. Do not inconvenience others. Above all, do not disrupt the image he was curating. When she shifted in her seat to ease the ache in her back, he noticed. "Sit still," he said quietly. "You look restless." She pressed her lips together and folded her hands in her lap, even as a dull pain radiated through her hips. A woman at the table leaned toward her and asked gently, "Are you all right?" She opened her mouth to answer, grateful for the concern, but he spoke over her. "She is fine," he said. "Just sensitive." The woman nodded, uncertain, and changed the subject. The moment passed, but the message remained. He was the interpreter of her experience. Her own words were optional. As the minutes ticked closer to midnight, the atmosphere thickened. The music grew louder. The lights warmed. Glasses refilled. He watched her intake closely. "You are not eating enough," he said. "People will think something is wrong." She looked at her plate and then at him. "I am trying," she said. "I feel nauseous." He scoffed. "You always feel something," he replied. "You did not used to be like this." The past was a weapon he wielded easily. Her breathing became shallow, a warning sign she recognized. She placed a hand on her belly and closed her eyes for a second. "I need a moment," she said. "Just to breathe." He leaned in, his voice low and sharp. "You will breathe later," he said. "Sit, smile." His fingers brushed her forearm. Not quite a grip, but firm enough to remind her of his presence. She froze, then complied, because compliance felt safer than resistance. The rules extended to time itself. When she suggested stepping outside before the countdown, he shook his head. "We are staying," he said. "Leaving now would look strange." She tried again, softer. "I am dizzy," she said. "I do not feel well." He looked at her, eyes narrowing. "Do not start," he said. "Do not do this here." The word here carried weight. It meant witnesses. It meant consequences. It meant she was trapped by the setting as much as by him. A bolder comment slipped from him when a guest joked about cravings. "She thinks pregnancy is a free pass," he said, chuckling. "An excuse for everything." The laughter around the table faltered, then resumed out of politeness. She felt exposed, like a child being corrected in public. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her water. She focused on the coolness of the glass, grounding herself. He noticed the tremor and leaned back, satisfied. Control did not always require force. Sometimes it was enough to make someone doubt themselves. "Relax," he said. "You are imagining things." She nodded again, the habit ingrained. But inside, fear pressed harder. Her body was telling her something was wrong. The baby shifted, a sharp flutter that made her gasp. She looked down, panic flashing across her face. "What is it now?" he asked. "Nothing," she said quickly, because admitting fear felt dangerous. A man at the next table glanced over, concern etched on his face. He met the man's gaze and smiled broadly. "New Year nerves," he said. "She will be fine." The man nodded and turned away, reassured by the confidence he projected. The phone in her purse vibrated, muted but persistent. She stiffened. He noticed. "Turn it off," he said. "You are distracting," she whispered. "It could be my doctor." He laughed softly. "At a party," he said. "You are unbelievable." She did not argue. She powered the phone down completely, cutting off the last lifeline that felt within reach. By now, the rules had become a cage. She measured every movement, every breath, every word. She scanned the room for exits, for staff, for anyone who might intervene if things escalated. Yet escalation rarely announced itself. It crept forward on the back of permission, each small surrender granting the next one more space. When he raised his voice slightly, no one stopped him. When he mocked her, no one challenged him. The silence of the room felt like agreement. The countdown clock brightened again, drawing cheers. He straightened his jacket and adjusted his cuffs, preparing for the performance. "Do not ruin this," he said, not bothering to lower his voice. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the anger coiled beneath the polish. "I am scared," she said quietly. The honesty slipped out before she could stop it. His expression hardened. "Do not say that," he replied. "You sound ridiculous." Her heart pounded. She tried to stand, to create distance, but he pressed his hand flat against the back of her chair. "Sit," he said. It was the clearest rule yet. She sat, tears stinging her eyes, the room blurring at the edges. The music swelled. The crowd counted down. 10, 9, 8. Each number landed like a step closer to something inevitable. She whispered to herself, "Stay calm." She counted her breaths. She reminded herself of the baby, of the need to protect, to survive. Around her, the party roared, unaware of the private war unfolding at the center table. His jaw clenched. His hands flexed. The rules had been enforced long enough. The next moment would test them all. The moment did not explode. It compressed. The noise of the ballroom narrowed into a tight tunnel. the lights seeming brighter and harsher as the final countdown surged toward 0. The band struck the opening chord of celebration. Glasses lifted, voices rose, and for a fraction of a second everything looked exactly as it should. Then his jaw locked. A muscle jumped in his cheek. His eyes fixed on her plate, on the food she had pushed away, on the quiet defiance he had decided was humiliation. "Enough," he said, loud enough to cut through the counting. She looked up, startled, heart slamming. "Please," she whispered, "not now." The word now barely left her mouth before he moved. His chair slammed backward. The scrape screamed across the marble floor and turned heads instantly. A hush rippled outward, confusion replacing cheer. He stepped closer, so close she smelled the sharp bite of alcohol on his breath, even though she had not touched a drop. His hands came down on the table, palms flat, fingers spread, the force rattling silverware. "You will not do this to me," he said. She tried to stand, instinct screaming for distance, but the edge of the table pressed into her thighs, and the crowd hemmed her in. Her chair caught on the rug. She was trapped in place. "What are you doing?" she said, her voice thin. Around them, phones lifted higher. Someone laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke that would end quickly. The countdown continued in the background, voices chanting numbers without understanding what was unfolding at the center table. He did not answer her. His hands rose. For a split second, she thought he might grab her arm, pull her back into the chair, something she could brace against. Instead, his fingers spread into her hair, gripping the back of her head with sudden, brutal certainty. Her scalp burned where he seized her. Time slowed enough for her to think, "This cannot be happening. Not here. Not now." "No," she said. "Stop." The word broke apart as he forced her forward. Her face hit the plate hard, cheek and mouth pressed into hot food, sauce smearing, breath knocked from her lungs. The impact jolted her entire body. The table lurched, glassware tipped and shattered, forks clattered to the floor. A collective gasp tore through the room. He held her there, not for long, but long enough for shock to register, long enough for the reality to sink into the watching faces. His hands stayed locked at the base of her skull, forcing her down, asserting control with horrifying clarity. She gagged, coughing, panic exploding as she struggled to draw air. Her hands flew out, one slamming against the table, the other instinctively cradling her belly as her body folded in on itself. "Stop!" someone shouted. "What the hell?" The countdown collapsed into chaos. Music cut off mid-note. A chair toppled nearby. Someone screamed her name. Phones captured everything, steady and merciless. The angle of his wrists, the bend of her neck, the smear of food across white linen. She twisted desperately, her shoulders scraping the table edge, pain shooting through her side. A sharp cramp clenched low in her abdomen, and fear flooded her mind, cold and absolute. "My baby." The thought screamed louder than any sound in the room. She tried to say it, but all that came out was a choked sob. He shoved her away at last, as if discarding something broken. The force sent her reeling sideways. Her chair tipped, one leg skidding. She barely caught herself on the table, knuckles white, breath tearing in and out of her chest. Sauce dripped from her hair onto her dress. Her face burned, her throat ached, her ears rang. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The silence was thick, unreal. Then voices erupted all at once. "Oh my God, did he just do that? Is she pregnant?" A woman near the aisle rushed forward, arms outstretched, placing herself between them. "Do not touch her," she said, shaking but firm. A man grabbed his phone with trembling hands and shouted, "Call an ambulance!" Another voice cut through, older and commanding. "Security, now!" He stood rigid, chest heaving, eyes darting as the weight of what he had done began to land. "She made me do it," he said, the words tumbling out fast and sharp. "She embarrassed me." He gestured vaguely at the table, at the ruined plate, as if it explained everything. She would not listen. The woman shielding her shook her head in disbelief. "You assaulted her," she said, in front of everyone. The word assaulted hung heavy in the air. She sank back into her chair, legs weak, hands shaking uncontrollably. One pressed to her belly, the other to her throat, as she tried to breathe past the burning pain. Tears streamed down her face, cutting clean paths through the mess on her skin. "My baby," she whispered. The words escaped before she could stop them. "Please." The effect was immediate. Faces changed. Shock hardened into anger. Phones lifted higher, no longer hesitant. The red recording lights felt like judgment. Security surged in from the edges of the room, black suits moving fast. "Sir," one guard said, stepping between them. "You need to step back," he bristled, anger flaring again. "Get your hands off me," he snapped. Another guard took his arm. "Now," the guard repeated, voice firm. She gagged again and leaned forward, coughing, panic clawing up her chest. A server appeared with napkins, hands shaking, pressing them gently into her hands. "Breathe," the server murmured, slowly. She nodded faintly, trying to follow, counting in her head because it was all she could do. The manager pushed through the crowd, face pale but controlled. She took in the scene in one glance and acted. "Separate them," she ordered. "Call emergency services. Preserve the footage." Her eyes flicked to the ceiling, to the small camera blinking red above them. All of it. He was pulled back another step, then another, his protests growing louder, more frantic. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. "She is overreacting." A man in the crowd shouted back, "We saw everything." Murmurs of agreement followed, low and angry. She closed her eyes for a second, dizziness washing over her. The room tilted. The noise felt far away, muffled, as if she were underwater. A hand settled on her shoulder, warm and steady. "You are safe," a woman's voice said close to her ear. "Help is coming." Outside the windows, fireworks exploded in brilliant color, celebrating a new year that had arrived without joy inside the ballroom. Confetti cannons meant to mark midnight remained silent, forgotten. The countdown clock above the stage flickered uselessly, frozen at 0. She opened her eyes again and looked down at her hands, at the slight tremor she could not control. She pressed both palms to her belly and whispered, "Stay with me." Tears blurred her vision, but she forced herself to stay conscious, to stay present. Around her, the party was dead. What remained was evidence, witnesses, and the sharp understanding that everything had changed in a single violent moment. The intervention did not arrive with sirens at first. It arrived with bodies moving, voices taking shape, and a sudden clarity that cut through the chaos. The woman who had stepped in front of her kept her arms wide, creating space where there had been none. Another guest joined her, then another, forming a loose barrier that shifted instinctively with every twitch of his shoulders. "Stay back," the woman said again, louder now. "She needs air." The words grounded the room, turning shock into action. Security tightened their formation. One guard placed himself squarely between them, hands open, calm but immovable. "Sir, you are stepping away," he said. "Now." The husband lunged half a step forward and was stopped, firm hands gripping his arms. "Do not touch me," he shouted, voice cracking. "This is my wife." A murmur surged, angry and disbelieving. Someone answered from the crowd, "Not like that." Phones kept recording, steady as metronomes. She bent forward, coughing again, the taste of sauce and panic still thick in her mouth. A server knelt beside her, offering water, then paused. "Small sips," the server said gently. She nodded and took a careful sip, hands shaking. Her other hand never left her belly. "My baby," she whispered again, the words trembling. The manager heard and moved closer, her presence authoritative and calm. "We are calling emergency services," she said. "Help is on the way. Stay with me." A woman draped a clean napkin over her shoulders, blotting gently at her hair. Another guest slid a chair into place and steadied it so she could sit without tipping. "Feet flat," the woman said softly. "Lean forward just a little." She followed the instructions, focusing on the voice, on the steps, on staying upright. Her breathing was uneven, but it was breathing. Across the small circle of protection, the husband struggled against the guards, anger spilling into desperation. "You are overreacting," he insisted. "She is fine." A guard shook his head. "Sir, stop talking," he said. "You are escalating this." The husband looked around for support and found none. Faces that had smiled minutes earlier were now hard, watchful. A man near the aisle spoke clearly, projecting his voice. "I saw everything." Others echoed him. "We all did." The manager raised her hand, and the room quieted a fraction. "Please," she said, "give the medics space when they arrive. Do not crowd her." She turned to a staff member. "Get the incident report started. Secure the table. No one touches anything." Her gaze lifted to the ceiling camera again. "Preserve all footage." The red light blinked, impartial. She closed her eyes as dizziness washed through her. A woman took her hand. "Squeeze if you feel another wave," the woman said. She squeezed, hard. A low cramp rolled through her abdomen, and she gasped. "There," she said. "It hurts there." The manager knelt to her level. "On a scale of 1 to 10, she asked. "How strong?" 7, she answered, tears spilling. "Maybe 8. The manager nodded once. "Okay, help is close." Security guided the husband farther back, step by step, until there was a clear corridor between him and her. He shouted once more, "This is ridiculous," and was answered by a chorus of disapproval. "Enough," a guard said. "You are done." The words landed with finality. The band stood silent on stage, instruments lowered. Confetti cannons remained untouched, their celebration obsolete. The doors at the far end opened and 2 medics hurried in, equipment bags bouncing against their legs. "Pregnant patient," the manager said, meeting them halfway. 7 months, assault, head impact, abdominal pain. The medics nodded, already moving. One knelt beside her, voice calm and precise. "Hi. I am here," he said. "Can you tell me your name?" she answered. "Good," he said. "Look at me. Take a slow breath in through your nose, out through your mouth." The other medic checked her pulse and blood pressure, speaking softly. "Any bleeding?" she asked. "No," she replied. "Just pain." The medic nodded. "We are going to take you to the hospital to check on you and the baby." Relief and fear collided in her chest. "Please," she said. "Yes." The medic glanced up. "We will move carefully." As they worked, a guard spoke quietly into his radio. "Police are on the way," he said. The husband heard and went pale. "Police?" he scoffed, attempting bravado. "For this," a woman near him snapped back. "For assault." The word cut cleanly through the air. The medics prepared a wheelchair. "On 3, one said. 1, 2, 3. They helped her stand and sit, supporting her weight. She clutched her belly, breathing through the movement. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then stronger. Not celebratory but protective, a show of solidarity. The manager raised her hand again. "Please," she said, "clear a path." They rolled her forward, the crowd parting. She caught glimpses of faces, some tearful, some furious, many recording. At the threshold, she turned her head slightly and saw the husband held by guards, his protests fading into the noise. She did not speak to him. She focused on the medic's voice. "You are doing great," he said. "Almost there." Outside the ballroom, the air felt cooler, quieter. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Stay with me," pressing her palms to her belly. The medic squeezed her shoulder. "We have you," he said. "You are not alone." Behind them, the party remained frozen, a room of witnesses bound together by the moment when everything changed. The spread began before the ambulance doors closed. It moved faster than sound, faster than sirens, riding the glow of screens held aloft by stunned hands. A clip appeared online with no caption at first, just raw footage that spoke for itself. Within minutes, words followed. New Year's Eve assault, pregnant woman attacked at gala, caught on camera. The video replicated itself across feeds, each share adding context, outrage, and disbelief. By the time the vehicle pulled away from the hotel, the night had a new narrative, and it was not celebratory. Inside the ballroom, guests stood in clusters, whispering and replaying what they had seen. Phones buzzed constantly. "It is everywhere," someone said, eyes wide. "My sister just sent it to me," another voice answered. "My boss asked if I was there." The manager paced with purpose, coordinating staff, locking down the scene, directing security to collect names and statements. "Please remain available," she told witnesses. "Police will want to speak with you." Heads nodded. No one argued. Outside, the cold air bit as the ambulance merged into traffic. The medic spoke softly, counting breaths with her, checking her pupils, asking gentle questions. "Do you feel dizzy?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "A little." He adjusted the blanket and nodded. "That is okay. We are monitoring you." The radio crackled with updates, locations, estimated arrival times. She stared at the ceiling and tried not to imagine the comment sections already filling with strangers arguing over what they had watched. At the hotel entrance, a reporter arrived breathless, microphone in hand. Security blocked her path. "No statements," a guard said. She pivoted anyway, speaking into her camera. "Breaking news tonight," she said, voice urgent. An apparent assault during a New Year's Eve gala has left a pregnant woman hospitalized. Video circulating online shows a man forcing her head into a plate as guests look on. The words felt unreal even to those who had witnessed it. Fireworks popped overhead. A cruel soundtrack. Back inside, police arrived and took control. Officers moved with efficiency, separating witnesses, collecting phones, requesting original files. "Please do not delete anything," one officer said. "If you recorded it, we need a copy." People complied, some shaking, some angry. "I cannot unsee it," a woman said, voice breaking. He held her there. The officer nodded. "We know," he said. "That is why we are here." The husband sat apart, flanked by guards, his bravado draining away with each passing minute. His phone buzzed incessantly. He glanced down and went pale. Messages stacked up from partners, from family, from advisors. "What did you do? Call me now. This is bad." He tried to laugh it off with an officer. "This is being blown out of proportion," he said. The officer did not smile. "Sir," he replied, "you are being detained pending investigation." On social media, the clip reached critical mass. Influencers reposted it with commentary. "There is no excuse," one wrote. "Pregnancy is not permission to abuse," another added. A medical professional chimed in, explaining risks in clear language. "Stress and abdominal impact can endanger both mother and fetus," the post read. "Immediate evaluation is essential." The thread exploded with agreement. The tone hardened. Sponsors took notice. A statement appeared from the hotel within the hour. "We are cooperating fully with authorities," it read. "Violence has no place at our events." Comments flooded in. "You should have stopped him sooner. Thank you for preserving the footage." The manager read the responses and kept working, documenting every detail, knowing the night would be scrutinized frame by frame. At the hospital, bright lights replaced glitter. Nurses moved quickly, attaching monitors, asking questions, noting answers. "Any loss of consciousness?" one asked. "No," she said. "Just pain." A doctor arrived, calm and focused. "We will run imaging," she said. "We will monitor contractions. You did the right thing coming in." Relief flickered, tempered by fear. She nodded, gripping the blanket. "My baby," she said. "That is our priority," the doctor replied. Back online, the clip jumped languages and borders. Subtitles appeared. News tickers rolled. Public assault shocks. New Year's celebration. Legal analysts weighed in. "The presence of witnesses and video strengthens the case," one said on a live stream. "This is not a private dispute." Viewers reacted in real time, disbelief giving way to fury. "Hold him accountable," comments demanded. "Protect her." The husband's company issued a short statement just before midnight in a different time zone. "We are aware of the situation," it said. "An internal review is underway." The market reacted anyway. Shares dipped in after-hours trading. Screenshots circulated with arrows and captions. "Consequences," someone wrote. "Already." In the hospital room, the beeping steadied her breathing. She stared at the monitor and listened to the rhythm, anchoring herself. A nurse squeezed her hand. "The internet is loud," she said gently, anticipating the fear. "But you are here. Focus on that." She nodded. "I just want him safe," she whispered, meaning the baby. The nurse smiled. "We are watching closely." As midnight passed fully into the new year, the narrative locked in place. This was no longer a rumor or a whispered recollection. It was a record, preserved and shared, impossible to erase. The night that promised joy had become evidence. The party that meant to dazzle had become a courtroom of public opinion. And as the hours ticked on, one truth settled everywhere it landed. Violence exposed under bright lights does not fade quietly. It multiplies, demanding answers, and it does not stop until someone listens. Morning arrived without celebration. It came in pale layers through the hospital blinds, quiet and clinical, revealing a room that smelled of disinfectant and calm voices. She lay on her side with monitors attached, one tracing her heartbeat, another mapping the steady rhythm of the baby inside her. The night had left her exhausted, throat sore, muscles aching, but she was awake and alert, listening to the machines as if they were counting with her, reassuring her that time was moving forward. A nurse entered softly and checked the screen. "Heart rate looks good," she said. "The baby is responding normally." Relief loosened something in her chest, and she nodded, eyes closing for a moment. "Thank you," she whispered. The nurse smiled. "The doctor will be in shortly to explain the results." She adjusted the blanket and added, "Police are here as well. They would like to speak with you when you are ready." The doctor arrived first, efficient and kind. She reviewed imaging and notes, choosing words carefully. "You had a mild head impact and significant stress," she said. "There are signs of uterine irritability, which means your body reacted to trauma. Right now, the baby is stable. We will continue monitoring today." She paused, meeting her eyes. "Avoiding further stress is critical." The message was clear and urgent. She nodded again. "I understand," she said. When the officers entered, they did not rush. They introduced themselves, explained her rights, and asked permission before sitting. One placed a recorder on the table. "You are not in trouble," he said. "We are documenting an assault that occurred in public. Take your time." She inhaled slowly and began. She described the evening, the refusals, the comments, the pressure, the moment when his hands forced her head down. Her voice wavered but did not break. She answered questions about pain, about witnesses, about what happened immediately after. When she mentioned the cramp and fear for her baby, the officer nodded and made a note. "That matters," he said. They showed her still frames from the video to confirm details. She flinched at first, then steadied herself. "Yes," she said quietly, "that is it." The officer thanked her. "We have multiple angles," he added. "We also have statements from guests and staff. Based on what we have, this meets the threshold for felony assault." The word felony hung in the room, heavy and final. A social worker arrived next, introducing herself with a calm warmth that felt like shelter. "I am here to talk about safety," she said, "about options." She explained protective orders, temporary housing if needed, support resources. "You do not have to decide everything today," she said, "but we can put protections in place now." She slid forms onto the table, simple and clear. The nurse remained nearby, a quiet anchor. Across town, paperwork moved quickly. A judge reviewed the request for an emergency protective order. The evidence was clear, the risk documented. The order was granted before noon, barring him from contacting her or coming near the hospital. An officer returned to the room with the confirmation. "This is effective immediately," he said. "Violation will result in arrest." She exhaled, a long breath she had been holding since the night before. News of the order traveled almost as fast as the video had. Headlines updated. "Protective order granted in New Year's Eve assault case." Legal analysts explained the process. "Emergency orders are designed to prevent further harm," one said, "especially when pregnancy and documented violence are involved." Comments shifted from shock to resolve. "Good," many wrote. "Protect her." In another building, a booking photo was taken. He looked smaller without the crowd, the lights, the performance. Charges were read. Bail conditions were discussed. His lawyer spoke in low tones, emphasizing seriousness, advising silence. The phone calls he wanted to make went unanswered. The night had stripped away the buffers he relied on. Back in the hospital room, a nurse returned with good news. "The baby's heart rate is strong," she said. "No signs of distress." Tears slipped free, this time from relief. She pressed her palm to her belly and whispered, "We are okay." The nurse nodded. You are doing everything right. Later that afternoon, the doctor cleared her to eat and drink lightly. A tray arrived with simple food. She ate slowly, listening to her body. The social worker returned to check in. Do you have someone you trust to call? She asked. She thought for a moment, then nodded. My sister, she said. The call was made. The voice on the other end broke, then steadied. I am coming, her sister said. You are not alone. As evening approached, paperwork was finalized. Follow-up appointments were scheduled. A plan was written and explained. The nurse placed it on the bedside table. This is your roadmap, she said. We will walk it with you. She smiled gently. You can rest now. Outside the window, the city moved on. Traffic flowing, headlines updating, opinions hardening into consensus. Inside, the room was quiet. She lay back and watched the monitor's steady line, counting the beats with gratitude. The law had begun to move. Medicine had done its work. Protection was in place. The night that tried to erase her had instead put her at the center of a record that could not be denied. And as she closed her eyes, one certainty remained clear. The next chapter would be written with witnesses, safeguards, and the unbroken rhythm of a life still growing strong inside her. The pattern revealed itself not with drama, but with order. Investigators began to stack facts, the way surgeons stack instruments, clean and precise. What had looked like a sudden eruption on a festive night now resolved into a sequence that made sense, and that clarity was devastating. Text messages were catalogued first, time-stamped and verified, short directives, corrections disguised as jokes, warnings framed as concern. Do not make a scene. Smile. People are watching. Read together. They drew a straight line, from control to punishment. Statements followed. The bouncer who noticed the grip on her elbow earlier in the evening described it plainly. It was firm, he said, not guiding, controlling. A server recalled how he corrected her choices. He answered for her, the server said. Every time. A guest at the adjacent table testified to the mockery. He laughed when she said she felt sick, the guest said. He called her dramatic. None of it was illegal alone. All of it mattered together. Digital evidence widened the frame. Friends provided screenshots from previous weeks. He hates when I say no, one message read. He says I embarrass him. Another showed escalation after she declined alcohol. Do not do this to me tonight, he wrote. The tone sharpened as the date approached. Investigators noted the cadence, pressure, reprimand, isolation. The pattern fit known indicators, and the file thickened. Medical documentation anchored the story to the body. The attending physician summarized findings in careful language. Stress-induced uterine irritability, she wrote. Head impact reported. Abdominal pain consistent with acute distress. She emphasized risk. Trauma can precipitate complications. The report did not speculate. It did not need to. The connection was clear. Words had weight when they were supported by monitors and scans. Video synchronized everything. Multiple angles aligned on a timeline accurate to the second. The chair scraping, the hands on her head, the forced contact, the duration measured and agreed upon. Experts slowed the footage to confirm force vectors and posture. This is not incidental contact, one analyst said. This is deliberate restraint. The phrase settled into the record and stayed there. Witness credibility strengthened the case. Accounts matched across distance and perspective. No one contradicted the core sequence. Even details that differed reinforced authenticity. Some remembered the gasp, others remembered the silence. All remembered the moment her body folded and the room changed. Investigators marked the convergence points and moved on. The narrative of provocation collapsed quickly. Claims that she embarrassed him were tested and failed. Footage showed her quiet refusals. Statements confirmed her calm tone. Medical advice explained her choices. The idea that her behavior justified harm did not survive contact with evidence. There is no trigger here, a prosecutor said. There is only control responding to resistance. Public reaction evolved as facts emerged. Early outrage sharpened into resolve. Commentators who had speculated retreated. The record is clear, one legal analyst said. This is a pattern case. Advocacy groups amplified the findings, explaining how escalation often hides in plain sight. It rarely starts with a strike. One post read, "It starts with rules." The message traveled widely. In the hospital, she watched the process from a careful distance. The social worker updated her without overwhelming her. "They are connecting the dots," she said. "You are not alone in this." She nodded, absorbing the words. Her body was still healing, still sensitive to stress. The doctor reminded her gently. "Rest is part of safety," she said. "Let us carry this for you." She accepted that help. A hearing date was set. Conditions were outlined. No contact, no proximity. Compliance monitored. The language was firm and plain. The law moved at a pace that balanced urgency with precision. Each step closed a door he had once assumed would stay open. Across screens, the story shifted from spectacle to lesson. "This is how accountability forms," a columnist wrote. "Evidence replaces excuses." The hotel released additional footage upon request. The staff training protocols were reviewed and updated. "Intervene earlier," the memo read. "Trust instincts." Institutions learned alongside the public. She received messages of support filtered through friends and advocates. Many were brief. "We believe you. Thank you for speaking." Some were long and personal, stories echoing hers. She read a few, then put the phone down. The nurse noticed and smiled. "Boundaries," she said approvingly. "That is healing." When she spoke again to investigators, it was to clarify details, not to defend herself. Her voice was steadier. "I said no," she told them. More than once, the statement was simple. It did not need embellishment. It fit perfectly with the record they had built. By evening, the case file felt complete. Not finished, but grounded. The pattern had been named. The escalation had been traced. The harm had been documented. The law had a map, and it would follow it. She rested with one hand on her belly, listening to the monitor's steady assurance. Outside, debates continued. Opinions hardened. Narratives aligned. Inside, the truth had settled into something solid and protective. What happened could not be reframed as a momentary lapse or a misunderstanding. It was a sequence, now visible to all. And once a pattern is seen, it cannot be unseen. The consequences arrived in waves, each one distinct, each one irreversible. The first wave was legal, precise, and immediate. Court filings moved from preliminary to formal, with quiet speed. Charges were listed clearly, public record updated, hearing dates confirmed. The language was careful and firm. Assault in a public venue, aggravating factors due to pregnancy, multiple witnesses, video evidence preserved. The words did not shout. They did not need to. They closed doors. The second wave was professional, and it hit faster than anyone expected. His company convened an emergency board call before markets opened. Attendance was mandatory. The agenda was brief. Risk exposure. Brand damage. Leadership conduct. A statement was drafted and revised twice. "We are placing him on administrative leave, effective immediately." The line appeared online within the hour. Another followed. "We are cooperating fully with authorities." Investors reacted in real time. Analysts adjusted forecasts. A red arrow slid downward on screens across trading floors. The explanation was simple. Uncertainty had a price. Sponsors followed. Emails arrived, polite and final. "In light of recent events, we are suspending our partnership." Contracts included morality clauses for moments like this. Clauses that had once seemed theoretical. Now they were activated. Billboards were quietly taken down overnight. A scheduled keynote appearance disappeared from an event page without comment. Silence replaced promotion. The third wave was social, and it was relentless. Invitations stopped. Group chats went quiet. Familiar names no longer returned calls. Friends who once laughed off his temper now faced the record and chose distance. A neighbor avoided eye contact in the elevator. Another moved to a different time slot at the gym. The performance that had once carried him through rooms no longer worked, without an audience willing to believe it. Inside the courthouse, a hearing proceeded with efficiency. The judge reviewed conditions and spoke plainly. "No contact," she said. "No proximity." The consequences for violation were spelled out without drama. He nodded, jaw tight. His attorney whispered cautions. The gavel came down. The room exhaled. Outside, cameras waited. He did not stop to speak. His lawyer did, offering a measured sentence about process and presumption. The clip circulated anyway, paired with the footage from the gala, juxtaposed and unflinching. Commentary followed. "This is what accountability looks like," one anchor said. "It does not depend on apologies." For her, the consequences unfolded differently. They were quieter, more intimate, and more stabilizing. A protective routine formed. Check-ins from the hospital. Follow-up appointments scheduled and kept. The social worker called to confirm housing arrangements and support. "You are not alone," she repeated, and the words began to feel true. Her sister stayed close, cooking simple meals, keeping conversations light when needed. Rest became a practice, not a luxury. Public support continued, filtered and moderated. Advocates amplified resources rather than speculation. "If you see something, intervene," one post read. "If someone says no, believe them." The tone shifted from outrage to instruction. Schools and organizations shared the clip with context, emphasizing prevention. The story became a case study, then a lesson. In his world, consequences stacked without pause. Insurance carriers reviewed coverage, legal costs mounted, advisors recalculated strategy and found few options. "This is not a PR cycle," one told him bluntly. "This is a record." He stared at the table, hands clasped, the habit of command useless here. The room did not bend. The hotel announced policy updates. Training expanded. A new protocol empowered staff to intervene earlier. "Trust your instincts," the memo said. "Safety over spectacle." Guests responded with approval. Bookings dipped briefly, then stabilized. The institution adapted. The night that had threatened its reputation instead reshaped its standards. At home, she unpacked slowly, placing items where they felt right, discarding what did not. She framed a printout from the doctor that showed a strong heartbeat and taped it to the refrigerator. It was a reminder of what endured. She practiced boundaries in small ways. Short walks, quiet afternoons, no comment sections. The world could talk without her listening. The fourth wave was reputational, and it lingered. Search results changed. Autocomplete suggested the night before his name. The association stuck. It would not be scrubbed by time alone. It would follow him into rooms that once opened automatically. Accountability had memory. A follow-up hearing confirmed compliance. The judge acknowledged cooperation and reiterated expectations. "This court will not tolerate violations," she said. The message was simple and public. The system would keep watch. For her, a different confirmation arrived at a prenatal appointment. The doctor smiled at the monitor. "Everything looks good," she said. Relief settled, deep, steady, and warm. She pressed her palm to her belly and breathed. The future did not feel easy, but it felt possible. By the time the ninth wave crested, the shape of the outcome was clear. Legal consequences continued on their path. Economic consequences recalibrated a life built on leverage. Social consequences redrew circles. Institutional consequences changed procedures. And personal consequences, the most important of all, created safety where there had been fear. There was no grand speech. No single moment of triumph, just a sequence of doors closing and others opening. The cost of violence was paid not in a burst, but in sustained reality. And as the days passed, one truth remained unmistakable. Public harm invites public consequence. It does not fade, it teaches. The ending did not arrive with a verdict or a headline. It arrived in quiet intervals, in mornings that felt steadier than the ones before, in breaths that no longer caught at the thought of being seen. Weeks passed, the case moved forward at its measured pace, and she learned to live alongside it rather than inside it. The law had taken hold. Medicine had done its work. What remained was the work of returning to herself. She walked more now, short routes at first, then longer ones, learning which streets felt safe and which to avoid. Neighbors nodded. Some said nothing. A few offered gentle words. We are glad you are okay." She accepted what felt helpful and let the rest pass. Boundaries had become a skill, practiced daily, improving with use. At a follow-up appointment, the doctor reviewed charts and smiled. "Your recovery is on track," she said. "Stress levels are down. The baby looks strong." The monitor traced a confident rhythm, a sound that still made her eyes close in gratitude. "Keep doing what you are doing," the doctor added. "Rest, support, calm." She nodded. "I will," she said, meaning it. Legal updates arrived through her attorney, summarized clearly. Dates, motions, next steps. She listened, asked questions, then put the folder away. The process existed whether she watched it or not. For the first time, she trusted that. On a quiet afternoon, she sat by the window with sunlight warming her hands and wrote a list. It was not a list of grievances or hopes. It was practical. Who to call? What to do if she felt overwhelmed? Where to go if she needed help? The social worker had suggested it, a safety plan that doubled as reassurance. She taped it inside a cabinet door, where she could see it when she needed it, and forget it when she did not. The city outside kept moving. New stories replaced old ones. The clip that had once dominated feeds slid lower, then lower still, never disappearing, but no longer defining the day. Accountability continued without spectacle. That was enough. One evening, her sister cooked dinner while music played softly. "You laugh more now," her sister said, not accusing, just noticing. She smiled. "I feel lighter," she answered, "like I am allowed to take up space again." The words surprised her with their truth. As the due date approached, preparations took shape. A crib assembled, clothes folded by size, a bag packed and repacked. She practiced breathing techniques taught by a nurse, counting slowly, feeling control return to her body. Each small task built confidence. Each completed step was proof that the future was arriving, whether fear agreed or not. She attended a prenatal class and sat among strangers who did not know her story. It felt liberating. When it was her turn to speak, she kept it simple. "I am excited," she said, "and I am learning to be calm." Heads nodded. The room accepted her without condition. On a morning bright with early sun, she paused on a bridge and watched light scatter across water. She placed a hand on her belly and whispered, "We made it this far." The baby kicked in reply, strong and insistent. She laughed, a sound that carried without effort. "I know," she said softly. The case would continue. Consequences would unfold. None of that erased what had happened. But it no longer owned the present. The present was this breath, this step, this growing life. When the call came weeks later announcing a procedural milestone, she listened calmly. "Thank you," she said. Afterward, she went for a walk, choosing a path she loved. The world felt ordinary in the best way. On the day she returned to the hotel to retrieve a forgotten item, she did not linger. The lobby looked different without the music, without the crowd. A staff member recognized her and offered a nod of respect. "We changed our training," the staff member said quietly. "Because of you." She felt a swell of emotion, not pride, but relief. "I am glad," she replied. "That matters." As the season turned, she found herself planning for moments beyond survival. First outings, first photos, firsts that belonged to joy, not recovery. She allowed herself to imagine them. The final truth settled gently. What began as horror ended as clarity. The public moment had done what silence never could. It exposed harm. It summoned help. It set boundaries that held. The future would still have challenges, but it would also have safeguards, community, and a record that could not be denied. That night, she slept deeply. In the quiet, the steady rhythm continued, strong and certain. Morning would come again, and with it, the simple promise she trusted now. Safety can be built. Justice can move. Life can grow, even after darkness.